We call this navigating the skies. And to take us through this discussion points, we have our very own commercial pilot, Akaljot Grewal. So, hi and welcome to the Firefly Adda, your virtual conversation starter, a platform where we showcase thought leaders from different walks of life. Today's episode would be very special for me because I'd be talking about a topic which is very passionate and fascinating at the same time for me. And this topic is about aviation and flying. We call this navigating the skies. And to take us through this discussion points, we have our very own commercial pilot, Akaljot Garewal. Akaljot, hi and welcome to the Firefly Adda.
Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. So, like I said, this is one of my favorite topics. So, I'll have a lot of questions for you. I hope you are well prepared to answer those. So, yeah. So, to begin with, I think we're talking about the pandemic situation and how that has sort of affected the aviation industry. I think that is going to be one of the primal sort of scenarios that we would be bringing out during our discussion points. So to begin with, how bad is the impact of coronavirus on India's airlines? So it's been more than 2.5, almost 3 months of standstill, and we just began the services recently. So what are your thoughts around this?
Yeah, this pandemic has been, particularly tough on airline and tourism industry. So it has affected the airlines quite badly. But just like any new situation, any changes, the company which is better prepared is going to, come out of it more successful than earlier. So airlines are making some changes right now, taking care of passenger safety, not just from a flying point of view, but from the pandemic point of view. And different airlines may be taking different approaches, but everybody's working on it to make sure that passengers fly safe.
Great. So, what is your near-term outlook on, for these airlines? So, how do you, see the sector reviving? I think they are one of the, sectors which are the worst hit, right? So, how do you see,
Yeah.
the sector reviving?
I think the year 2020 is just going to be about survival. We have been hit so bad, and this is, new information. This is all a new scenario. Nobody had ever, in the recent past, nobody had experienced this kind of pandemic. So everything is kind of new. 2020 most likely is going to be all about survival. Starting 2021, things, we can start looking forward to um, better solutions, better scenario. Once this thing whole subsides a little bit, we can look forward. Right now, the biggest challenge is, especially from airlines' point of view, that there are no passengers to fly. Right? Even if you lift the lockdown, the problem is that people are not willing to fly. Initially, what is happening right now is people who are stuck in metropolitan cities are going back to their villages and to their hometown. So initially there is a little bit of traffic right now since the lockdown has been uplifted for a few days. But after that, it still kind of looks difficult and bleak. And like I said, 2020 is just about survival. And when things start coming back to a new normal, 2021 onwards, we can see some sort of growth and some sort of normalcy.
Valid points there. So I think you've already, begun flying. I think we did discuss this, and you've already started. I think you've done more than 3 or 4 flights already. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts on how effectively are these airlines operating now, keeping in mind the safety, the hygiene aspects, and how much of the risk the pilots are actually taking, pilots and the crew? So, do you think this will actually sustain in the long run? You mentioned about 2020, and it's about survival, right? So, how are you actually putting yourself at risk and operating? So maybe some light around that.
Yeah, there is some sort of a risk on the front line. When we go for our flights, we are going to places where there's a lot of people, and the probability of falling sick kind of increases. But at the same time, we are taking measures, and I can say that for almost all the airlines, we are taking measures to make sure that that doesn't happen. And just not just not about airlines. Another thing, even airports, all the other services, right? They're taking sufficient precautions. The fact that everybody is wearing masks right now, and there is additional screening, temperature screening at the entry of the airport. So new procedures are in place, which will make it safer to fly.
Fantastic. So you mentioned that, I mean, at least for us, you're like a frontline warrior in a way. So, and you actually carry that responsibility of navigating through these conditions now and transporting people, with to their respective hometowns. So it sounds like a very
Yeah.
risky proposition. So what do you feel about it? Do you feel, do you feel a sense of pride in, flying at these situations and these times?
Yeah, it does come with a sense of responsibility, right? Like, there's one saying that I recall that when the going gets tough, the tough
Yeah.
gets going, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's that sort of a thing that we have been hit by really tough times, but you have to step up to that responsibility. You can even call it an opportunity where you can prove your mettle.
Hmm.
And so yeah, it's you have to be careful about these all these new things. New procedures are in place. Airlines are taking care of the safety of passengers and crew. So yeah, you have to work as a team, and you know hope for the best.
So what do you feel now? So when you actually wear that uniform and step out, now versus maybe when there was no COVID. So do you feel a sense of anxiety while stepping out?
Well, if you talk about the uniform, when we were flying daily in and out before the coronavirus situation, you do get desensitized towards it, right? Doing the same thing over and over again. So I wasn't really expecting it, but after this lockdown was, uplifted in a certain sense, when I put on my uniform, there was a huge sense of pride. I
Yeah.
wasn't even expecting it,
Hmm.
so it felt pretty good going back to work. So yeah, that was a good feeling.
Fantastic. So I think that's very inspiring as well. So so you are a pilot, and a little bit more about you and your journey of you being a pilot. So you are a pilot, and was this by choice, or was this an inspiration triggered by some aspiration in mind, or and how has your journey been so far being a pilot?
Oh, it's been really rewarding. Like, I'm really happy that I chose this profession, and this decision was after my 10th. Um,
Hmm.
I was in Ludhiana, and there was a flying club there, and we saw. I was with my mother and siblings, and we were just driving along, and we saw a yellow aircraft flying by,
Hmm.
and we just decided to go to that airfield because we knew that they give joyrides, right? So I took that joyride, and it was quite fascinating. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and So it was a wonderful experience, and that's when I started thinking about it. Before that, I had never considered this profession. And since that point, I was really fascinated by it. And after I completed my 12th, I completed my schooling. I chose to, enroll myself for training to become a pilot, and eventually got a job with an airline. And it's been pretty good since then.
Fantastic. So, like I said, this is always my fascinating, topic, aviation and flying, and I'm not going to leave you because I have a lot more questions to actually ask you. So, we did talk about you wearing the uniform and the sense of pride you actually felt, post the lockdown was lifted. But in a normal scenario, when you actually wear your uniform and enter the aircraft, so what exactly goes into your mind? So maybe can you shed some light around that?
Uh, Yeah, I really like that idea because the moment you put on your uniform, right, it sparks a sense of responsibility. It sparks a sense of pride, and everything kind of becomes serious at that point of time.
Yeah.
When you're at home relaxing, you're free to do whatever you want to do. But the moment you put on your uniform, things get serious. You have to um, consider all the lives that you are responsible for, and a sense of professionalism kicks in. And it's a wonderful feeling. You step in your dispatch and you start going through the documents. You have to make sure if the weather of the destination where you're going to, it's all right. What is the contingency plans? So it gets pretty serious, pretty professional, and pretty rewarding at the same time. It might sound quite overwhelming, but at the same time, when that your work gives you so much meaning, and that becomes such a rewarding experience for you, that you love doing it day in and day out.
Fantastic. So even though I'm not a pilot, but I know for a fact that taking off and landing is the most thrilling aspect of flying. And in the
Yeah.
cockpit, you would actually, be navigating the yoke many a times to, take off and land. So what does it actually feel to navigate the plane, while taking off and landing?
It's quite exhilarating. Like you pointed out, it's pretty accurate that you do have to be careful. Takeoffs and landings are one of the most demanding situations, and it is full of risk because you are pretty close to ground. You don't want anything to go wrong, but at the same time, you have to be aware enough that if anything does go wrong, you have to be quick enough to recognize that and get yourself out of that situation, troubleshoot. Or it doesn't usually happen. The aircrafts these days are so safe and your procedures are all in place that flying is like one of the most safest means of travel. But yeah, those are pretty exciting opportunities that we get to experience on a daily basis, and I'm proud of it.
Fantastic. Now, coming to a question about navigating through troubled conditions and turbulence, right? So what runs into your head when such conditions, are encountered by you?
Um, you are kind of prepared. We go through a lot of training, right?
Mhm.
Every year we have to, every 6 months actually, we have to go through two simulator sessions in which we practice all these things. All the emergencies are thrown at us, and we have to navigate through it. We have to understand, we have to follow the procedures which are already in place. So um, there's not a whole lot of I can do this or I could do that. It's more like you have to follow the procedures which are already set by the airline, by the aircraft manufacturers. So you take care of those procedures and ensure the safety of the flight. At the same time, you have to be alert enough to see what's the position of the aircraft. If you're stuck in any troubleshooting, any difficult situation, you have to be aware of what's the closest airfields around you. So there's one aspect of your training where you have to make sure that you follow the procedures diligently. At the same time, there is another aspect where you have to be alert enough to see the situation around you. It can't all be training. So when you consider those things, you have to be alert enough to see what the present situation is like, where exactly you're geographically, and then you have to use your decision making to bring the aircraft down as safely as possible.
So, any such conditions you have encountered in your flying journey up until now?
Yeah, not any very serious ones, but yeah, I have been flying for almost 8.5 years now. So during that span, you do end up seeing some situations where you really have to figure out what your options are, what's the best course of action, and yeah, it has happened multiple times. But like I said, you all your training kind of kicks back at that very moment, and there's a rush of adrenaline, and you get pretty focused on the situation. You don't get um, the moment it gets serious. You don't get distracted that easily, and you're focused on the job, and you focus on your procedures, you focus on the training that has been provided to you, and with good decision making, you come back and bring the plane and all the passengers down safely.
Absolutely. So we're always in safe hands. That actually means so. From a nervous flyer perspective, a lot of people actually are nervous flyers, right? So,
Yeah.
from a pilot's perception, what would your advice be to such people? You did mention that flying is one of the safest modes of transportation.
Yeah.
So what would your advice be to nervous flyers?
Yeah, just like we discussed earlier, flying is the most safest means. Statistically speaking, um, it is absolutely the safest mode of transport. Um, Knowing this fact itself and understanding what goes behind it, just understanding how much training a pilot goes through, I would say there's actually nothing to worry about. Like over the span of 8 years that I have been flying, even when things are not going exactly your way, there are all these safety measures, there are all these procedures which are in place, and there's a lot of training, lot of effort have gone into it to fly the aircraft from one point to another, not only from pilot's point of view, but from engineering team, from the safety department, from all all the people who have designed the procedures, the SOP that we call it, standard operating procedures. All these things are in place, and there are people accountable for each and everything. So this amount of preparation does not go into any other means of transport. Like your aircrafts are inspected not just on a daily basis, but on each and every takeoff and landing. The aircraft is inspected by the engineering department. So it's a whole team effort to make sure that we make this mode of transport the safest mode of transport.
Well, that's really reassuring. Thank you so much for that. Now, from a memories perspective, you mentioned you've been flying for 8 years, right? So, do you actually want to maybe share some good memories, while flying, some good views that you may have, come across? But because I believe you sitting in the cockpit would actually get one of the most fascinating and mesmerizing views. So, you want to share a few of those memories or some views that has mesmerized you while flying?
Absolutely, man. I cherish it. I acknowledge it on a daily basis. Like
Yeah.
you won't believe it. It's been 8.5 years now, but still, every time I step into the cockpit, and when we are flying at 35,000 feet, 39,000 feet, um, I still am amazed that I'm sitting, in the nose
Yeah.
of the aircraft. And seriously, I really wish people could see the kind of views that we see, because it's such a humbling experience,
Mhm.
right? Now, I'm not even bragging. It is such a wonderful experience when you see, when you're flying right next to the clouds, and at the same time you see the wrath of nature when
Yeah.
you have to fly around all these big clouds, monsoon, stuff like that. The views are beautiful. What I particularly enjoy is whenever I'm flying over India. India is a huge country and a beautiful country, and I think people don't realize it, right? Being on the ground, but when I'm flying the aircraft from east to west, north to south, we end up seeing almost all part of our nations from 35,000 feet. And the view is so humbling that if more people could see that view, if more people could enjoy that view, it would be so much better for humanity. You get to know how small we are, and at the same time, what kind of effect we have on this planet. So it's a wonderful and a humbling experience.
So do you also spot other aircrafts lurking around you, and how do you navigate your path, around them?
Okay, that would be flat plan route to Bubin to hold, confirm MRAT 653.
Emirates 653, affirm, hold at Bubin, follow the flight plan route, your delay is less than 20 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. So I was talking about our team effort, right?
Yeah.
So ground services are part of that team. We are on the radar at all times. So when you're under radar control, they could see you on their screens, and they have information of all the aircrafts flying around them. So the ground controllers direct you, they ask you to maintain a certain level. And how it works is that each reciprocal traffic, right, traffic flying in opposite direction, you separate them by 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
So it always happens that just uh, you see all these aircraft flying right above you or right below you with a gap of 1,000 feet. And yeah, it's a wonderful experience flying, flying at the same time, looking at another uh, metallic tube flying in the opposite
Yeah.
direction, and spotting it in the sky. And what we like to do is try to spot what type of aircraft it is,
Hmm.
and then when it flies past you, we try to see the tail sign
Hmm.
of that aircraft, the tail of the aircraft, and we try to guess which airline it is. So yeah, this is one of the things pilots keep themselves busy with during the cruise
Yeah.
phase.
So you mentioned about the cruise phase, right? So do you like have conversations with your, captain in any way, or your co-pilot in any way? So what kind of conversations do you maintain while flying?
Yeah, that is one of the rewarding experiences of this career, that you get to meet new people
Yeah.
on a daily basis. You
Yeah.
fly with different types of people, different people with different hobbies, and there is always so much to talk about. At the same time, there are some flights, some night flights where you maintain a peaceful kind of environment. Sometimes during the challenging situation, you maintain, very focused and a peaceful kind of environment. At the same time, there is a whole lot to talk about, right? There are different people having different experiences.
Yeah.
You talk about where they're from, what their hobbies are, what they like to do when they're not flying. And one of the best conversations actually you have are during long night flights, when you can see the night sky,
Hmm.
right? And it has this kind of effect on all humans. Like, we talk about going out in the nature and looking at the stars, right?
Yeah.
When we get to experience that from 35,000 feet,
Hmm.
it takes it to another level. Like, literally, it takes it to another level.
Yeah.
'Cause all of the stars have faded away. Just try not to worry, you'll see them someday.
And so those are really interesting conversations when you can see the stars, you spot different constellations, and that starts a whole new set of topics to talk about. So it's wonderful.
Any funny conversations with the ATC? Anytime? Any memory around that?
Yeah, it's fun interacting with the ATC also. Although we have to be, more quite professional most of the times.
Mm-hmm.
You have to maintain the RT discipline, the radio telephony discipline.
Yeah.
At the same time, when you do get some gaps in between where today is not a very busy airspace,
Mm-hmm.
you are the only one flying. I do have a couple of these controllers, the ground controllers, who are, I would call them my RT friends, because I've never met them in real life.
Yeah.
But you recognize the voice, you know their name, they kind of recognize you. So when the airspace is not very busy, you can strike a conversation asking him how their day is going, and they can ask you where you're flying to. So yeah, it's pretty fun. I enjoy interacting with the ground controllers also.
Very interesting. And you keep flying. There are a lot of other planes lurking around you. So is there any cross mapping radio frequency happening, and do you actually hear conversations from other flights as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, the way radio telephony works is you can hear everyone and everyone can hear you. That's the reason why you have to maintain that discipline, because when you're saying anything at that time, everybody can hear you. And so one person have to speak at a time. So we can listen to all the other aircrafts which are around us, going into any destination. You can hear everybody around you. But we do have a pilot frequency also, which is kind of specific to pilots, not monitored by the ground controllers. It is quite useful, especially when you're flying those long flights over the oceans where you don't have ground contact.
Yep.
You can talk amongst each other and locate each other, and if you have any important message to pass, this is what we like to do. Like if one aircraft is within the reach of a ground controller, but the other aircraft is far away to not being able to relay the message, you can get in touch with the other aircrafts and relay your message by other flights to the ground controller. So it's quite fun.
Fantastic. That's so fascinating. So so any striking incident or a memory that you want to maybe talk about? Yeah, so I hope I'm not pushing you to the corner here, but yeah, would love to hear that.
Memory, I don't know. The whole experience in itself is quite amazing. I would not really like to pin it down to one memory, but the whole experience in itself, when we're flying at night over the sea, when you're flying during the day, you can see the mountains, you can see the vast plains, and the whole experience overall is pretty interesting, pretty rewarding. I don't know if this justifies your question, but
No,
yeah,
we'll take that as we'll take that as you have infinite memories, so we'll actually generalize it to your answer, so that's absolutely fine. Yeah, from a budding pilot perspective, so there'll be a lot of budding pilots and aspirants who want to actually sort of fly. So what would be some of your tips and best practices for them to sort of prep up?
The best thing to do is, this is one of the most common things you would hear, is to keep yourself prepared. And it holds true, because in aviation, whenever the opportunity strikes, you kind of have to, capture that opportunity. You have to capture that moment. And, luck only favors the person who's prepared. So one good thing to do is keep yourself prepared. But what I would also like to add on to is keep that motivation high. Right? This is not one of those professions that you just jump into. This can't be forced onto you. Right? This is one of those professions where you have to have a very high level of motivation. You have to be focused enough to see your target and be really focused to move forward. Um, so yeah, keep your motivation high, keep engaging with other people who are interested in the same field, and you know, uh, it tends to happen that you would have those kind of friends around you who have the same area of interest,
Hmm.
and amongst yourself, you always keep the motivation level high, and keep yourself current with the latest news.
Great. So, from a more deeper perspective, this lockdown has actually shaped us in different ways and means. So, I wanted to understand, how has it shaped you as a person? So, any thoughts around that?
I got a whole lot of time, man. A whole lot of time. Almost 3 months of no flying. This is one of those times where I personally feel that you should spend on exploring yourself, which is what I did. I spent some time on fitness, a little bit of meditation. So all these things help. You do end up getting a whole lot of time for your hobbies also, especially in a time like these. So I really like photography and making some small videos just for the fun of it. So I got a lot of time to explore my hobbies, and yeah, overall it has been interesting. There were some days which were bit slow and heavy, I would say, but which is normal, right? Everybody is going through the same thing, but at the same time, you make the most of it. You spend more time on your hobbies and your interests, and yeah, explore yourself.
Yeah. Now, on the other side, there was not some great news with respect to maybe a few pilots being laid off or a few of them being grounded during, this time, and even now for that matter. So, any sort of success mantra or any positive tips for them to sort of, pep them up from your side?
Yeah, it's been quite difficult. I agree. Airlines have they don't have as many flights. I do have some friends who don't have jobs anymore because of this whole situation. It is going to be very difficult, but we are hoping for a recovery as soon as possible, of course. But during this time, again, the best idea would be to keep yourself current with the latest information, the latest news, whatever is going in the latest situation. At the same time, keep your morale high, and I believe that is really important. You can't let it affect you mentally so much that that takes a toll on your health. So spend this time to keep yourself current. At the same time, do maintain your health, and which includes mental health also, and engage in other activities. This make this time a positive experience by exploring what kind of a person you are, what kind of hobbies do you have, who are you as a person when if you're not a pilot, right? So that keeps you motivated in life. So whenever the opportunity strikes next, you can materialize it and get on with it.
Great, fantastic. So maybe a couple of more questions before we sign off. So what do you foresee the future of aviation and airlines, going forward? We did speak about, its revival maybe in 2021, 2020 being all about survival. And what do you see, flying is going to look like from a cost perspective? Is it going to be an expensive affair going forward?
Yeah, I believe so, because even before this whole situation, right, there were many articles that I was reading, there were many videos that I was going through, that the tickets were already being too cheap. It was already becoming increasingly difficult to run an airline,
Hmm.
even in the absence of the pandemic. And there were more regulations that were being put that the airlines should not be engaging in predatory pricing activities, and there has to be a fair price. You don't want to rip off passengers also, but at the same time you have to maintain a healthy, sustainable environment where the airlines can make profit and survive the whole situation. Now situation have changed, the whole dynamics have changed, so of course things are going to be different. There is going to be a new normal, and if you ask from pricing point of view, this is just my personal opinion that we might see a price hike which was already due.
Okay, good. So, look, I really want to get back to flying. I actually miss flying. So, what would your advice be, to a traveler, who's looking forward to flying, henceforth? I don't know when this pandemic is going to end. So, but if you really look forward to flying, so what would your advice be to a person who really wants to go out there and, fly?
Yeah, the best thing to do would be to keep yourself current with the latest information,
Mhm.
right? Like you have experienced it already. There is so much information out there, and new information being circulated every minute. Things keeps changing every so often, because this whole situation is new to everyone. Nobody was prepared for it. So it is good to keep yourself updated from the news point of view. Taking care of your personal hygiene, sanitizing your hands, wearing the mask. All these things are important because in the aircraft we don't have the luxury of maintaining, physical distancing.
Yeah.
And so, if you are in that kind of environment, airlines are taking their precautions and making their procedures safer and safer. At the same time, it's a shared responsibility with the passengers also, because they have to take care uh, of all these things. They have to be wearing the mask at all times, because it's not just about you getting the virus, but if you are a person who could be a carrier, right, who could be contagious, then that same mask helps you from spreading it around to other passengers. So stuff like this, keep yourself updated with the latest information, and when we are prepared enough, then there is nothing to worry about. If you're taking care of all these things, and if the airlines are taking care of all the safety measures, then the risk drops down significantly, and you don't have to be nervous to fly. You can fly freely, provided you are taking care of all these precautions.
Thank you so much for that. So one final one, I mean, glum moments, people being very anxious about the whole pandemic. So maybe a positive thought that you would want to maybe leave for the audience.
I would just like to point out again that this situation is new. Things got really bad, but like I said earlier, right, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. I would like to say that again, because in this present scenario, everybody has to be brave enough and smart enough and responsible enough to face the present situation and come out of it victorious.
Fantastic. So, that's some great takeaways. Thank you so much, Akaljot. You have navigated your way through these questions, just like how you actually navigate the skies. Thank you so much for being the part of the Firefly Adda. We really enjoyed the conversation, and I really believe that the audience will actually take some good insights from this. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.